In this episode, I talk with Dr. Joseph Yee, board-certified holistic psychiatrist. He shares his personal story from painful experiences in med school to becoming a musician to coming out the other side in med school and growing his successful businesses. He talks about why he doesn't believe in disorders, about using nutrition to get off psych meds, and about the tapering process. He describes what he calls the 4 pillars of wellness, combined with a strategy to not only detox from toxic substances and foods, but also to get rid of the toxic people in our life. He describes connection as the opposite to addiction and how struggle in our life makes us wiser and stronger on the other side. Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I love to invite people on the show with all different kinds of perspectives. I love to listen and learn from people from all different walks of life. So I became connected to Joe Yee through mutual friends and social media. I spent one evening on a long TikTok live and was impressed with not only his storytelling, his humor, his edgy, truth-telling, expressive style, but also the breadth of his life experience around working with nutrition to free his clients from all sorts of addictive substances, including ones that come from a prescription. So let me tell you more about him. Dr. Joseph Yee is a board-certified addiction psychiatrist who specializes in holistic psychiatry and detoxification. After graduating from medical school, Dr. Yee went on to do his psychiatry residency at the Cooper University Hospital. It was there, at the heart of Camden, New Jersey, where he learned to treat some of his most challenging cases of psychiatric addiction and detox patients. As a resident physician, he apprenticed under Dr. Joel Fuhrman on nutritional therapy for mental health treatment and worked at several dual diagnosis facilities, mental health and substance abuse. Since starting his solo private practice in 2009, Dr. Yee has helped patients throughout Bucks County, Pennsylvania, overcome their dependency to opiates, alcohol, and other substances through his modern detox program, which provides an individualized tapering plan as an outpatient basis as an alternative to going into an inpatient facility for treatment. He integrates motivational counseling, nutritional therapy, exercise science, yoga, and my all-time favorite, spirituality. Enjoy.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying thank you for sending me these awesome free gifts. And the first one that I guess for some reason resonated with me was a black bat. And my wife sprayed this on me and she said, "Hey, I don't think you need to take a shower anymore." So that was really cool. It felt really refreshing. And then, just so you know, you didn't ask me to, talk about this on your show, but I wanted to because, so as far as the oil, it says here, the truth teller. And I was like, okay. It says fearless speech, authentic expression, and conviction. So I took 5 drops of this. I went on to TikTok live last night. I was on fire. So I don't know if it's placebo or that, but something came over me. And I think it might've been the best TikTok live that happened. It was not only very engaging with the audience, Katie, but the audiences were engaging with themselves. So I had to go upstairs and I said, "Hey guys, I just need to go upstairs and get a drink." And then so I came back and then everyone's just like talking to you. It was like a tribal community. So I don't know if it resonated with them too, but it was my favorite live that I did last night. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
It was dope. Yeah.
Okay, so take it 5 times a day and then let me know what you experience in like a week or 2.
You got it, buddy. I will. Thank you. Woo. Thank you for that gift. I want to try all the other stuff that you sent me too. So I'm very excited to give a weekly report and stuff.
Yeah, actually, I just drank your modern detox before I got to the office. It's really good. Yeah, I love it. It's delicious.
Did you mix it with cold water or lukewarm?
Lukewarm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Try it with cold water next time. I actually like it cold, but
okay.
Awesome. See how you feel in about a week yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Actually, this morning I noticed I had, I don't know if folks ever like report detox symptoms, but I had while I was running, I had this like little squeeze in my head. And I know that headaches are connected to the liver. And so I thought, maybe that milk thistle is,
that milk thistle, serious stuff. Yeah.
dumping some stuff.
Yeah, and my wife's friend actually said that she had a little bit of a breakout, and she's like, "Is that because of your product?" I mean, it's cleansing your system out, so it has to get out one way or the other. So, yeah. But thank you for sharing that. Actually, that's cool.
So most folks have, most folks have heard of Kelly Brogan and Sayer and on the podcast on the Flowerlounge, and we've talked about like psychiatry, and I wanted to just get your take on how you would talk about holistic psychiatry. Like, what is that to you? Because I think for reference, like, remember how I was saying that you and I do the same thing in the sense, the first 10 years of my career, I was seeing people one-on-one. Like, people would come to me, tell me all their deepest, darkest secrets, and then I'd give them a flower. How are you, like, what is holistic psychiatry to you, and how did you get to that conclusion?
Yeah, it's a mystery. So holistic psychiatry to me is looking at the person as a whole, right? So if someone comes in to meet a psychiatrist and says, "I'm really depressed," and the psychiatrist says, "Okay, well, I got this medication called Prozac for you," and the patient says, "Okay, let me try that," and then after a month later comes back and says, "Hey, I still feel really lousy," and the guy says, "Well, have you heard of Lexapro?" That idea seems ludicrous to me, I mean, maybe that person's depressed because a family member passed. He's grieving. Maybe the person's eating 4 donuts 4 times a day. Maybe the person's sleeping only 3 hours a night, and they're connecting with like really toxic people. They're not utilizing their mind and body properly. There's so many different elements into making a person a whole, So I guess when I was going through medical school, I didn't do very well on the exams. And I don't believe that the exams, measure your true potential as a clinician, right? So after going through years of studying, the molecular structure of a triglyceride molecule, and, you think that you're going to learn about healthy fats, but you got to memorize the structure of a fat molecule. At a certain point, I said, this isn't the way to go. And even early on in my career, when I was prescribing medications and I'm not getting the results that I'm looking for, I sought elsewhere, So the holistic journey really for me started off with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a 7-time New York Times bestselling author. And his claim to fame was he wrote this book called Eat to Live. And that book was about, nutrition as medicine. So when I read that book, I was like, holy cow, like, yes, like we are made up of what we eat, really. And if we eat right and we take care of ourselves, then we probably wouldn't need all these chemicals that are artificially manipulating our neurotransmitter systems. And then sometime later, I saw Kelly Brogan, our good friend, on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I was shocked to find a woman who had the courage to speak out against the system, a broken down health system, and saying, this isn't the way to go. I mean, I love Kelly and I have tremendous respect for her. I do question though, like if someone has schizophrenia, if they're having auditory hallucinations and paranoid psychotic thoughts, I'm sorry, but nuts and blueberries aren't going to do the trick, So in those cases, I have no other way than to prescribe something to help tone down those kind of paranoia, especially if they're, potentially a threat to themselves and to other people, right? But generally, I would agree with 99.983% of the things that Kelly Brogan and Sayer preach out there, which is there are other ways of healing by taking care of your mind, body, and the spirit. And I think we're in line with that philosophy as well, right?
What's your feeling on disorders?
Oh.
And the book of all the...
You mean the psychiatric Bible, the DSM-5?
DSM-5.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of labels. I feel personally, I believe that everyone has a little bit of something, right? I mean, I'm sure you've experienced moments of depression. I've had a panic attack on stage a couple of times in my lifetime, which is really embarrassing. I think everything's somewhat of a spectrum, and some people might have some levels of anxiety and other people have a little bit more. I tend to see those kind of, I'm not a big fan of labeling people. So when people say, I have anxiety disorder, I was like, well, you have experience with anxiety, just like every other human being. So just psychologically getting them to believe that they're not their disorder is the first step of helping them get out of this, because if someone keeps saying, yes, I have anxiety, I've been labeled with an anxiety disorder, then they start to really believe that that's who they are. And I'm trying to get them out of that mindset and say, no, man, you are not your diagnosis. Let's not go there. And let's talk about, you've had experiences with anxiety, you've had experiences with depression. So the first thing that I'm usually telling people is let's get rid of the labels. Let's get that out of your mind. And let's start focusing on other things that we really want from our lives.
Wonderful. And what are the kinds of questions that you ask folks in your one-on-one sessions that are different than, say, like which medication will work for you, right?
I love that question, because when people come in to see me, despite the way that I'm dressed today, I'm dressing down with a t-shirt and a hat, but depending on the client, sometimes I'll get decked out in a nice suit. Sometimes if I know that it's a younger generation guy coming in, I'll wear a hat and sweatpants and a t-shirt, and they seem to vibe with that better, But the first thing I generally ask everyone is, what do you want? And then people get stumped by that. What do you mean what I want? And then they'll say something like, I want to be happy. Oh, okay, well, here's the problem with that statement or that request is that I want to be happy is like so general, right? Like what makes you happy versus me happy is different. So does happiness mean to you losing 10 pounds of fat and gaining 15 pounds of muscle? Does it mean waking up in the morning with all this energy so you could run a marathon? Does it mean that you could just go around and feel good all the time? Like what does happiness mean to you? So when the client starts thinking about things like that and they start getting very specific, like, yeah, for me, happiness means, finding, connecting with like awesome people that inspire me. Happiness means getting 10 pounds of muscle so I could like bench 158 pounds and go run a marathon or so on. Okay, great. Now we have specific target goals, right? And then a month or two later, hey man, are you happy? Yes, I am. How do you know? Because I could lift a $150, I could run a marathon, and I have amazing friends around me. So usually I'm like a very goal-oriented, like business psychologist, right? Or a psychiatrist rather. I'm trying to help people think very strategically as to how to get what they want. And you'll be surprised, Katie, but most people don't know what they want. And then that's the beginning of the whole healing process, is in identifying what is it that you want out of this deal, and let me help you achieve that.
Wow, love that. What do you say to people who are like, just think positive?
Hey, listen, I have nothing against the word. Well, I say I do. I think positivity is a beautiful word. I mean, we need more positivity in this world. It's just that I believe that people have kind of killed that word for me because, you and I are both, actively engaged in social media and so on. And, for every time someone says, we got to be more positive, I just want to like vomit sometimes because there's other ways to pitch it. And I think if we just keep saying think positive, it just goes into one ear out the other. So the way I could, shift the consciousness into a new perspective is like, hey, if it's hard for you to think positive, at least focus on what is right, or at least what you want. What's really interesting, Katie, is that so many people practice anxiety, right? So many people practice worrying about things that hasn't happened yet, but may or may not happen. I'm asking people not to practice positivity as much as practice believing in something that may or may not happen, but that may be awesome for you. It's only fair. If you're going to practice anxiety, practice believing, practice focusing on what you want. To circle back to your original question, what I think about that word, I think it's a beautiful word. I think it's just been overplayed. I think people nowadays, especially with the world current situation, some people are getting a little bit more real, a little bit harder. And, when you say think positive, I don't think people respond to that as well as, hey, let's think smart. Let's focus on what you want. Let's practice believing. I think that's a cooler way of pitching it to people.
That was one of the things that I really respected about you, because I heard you talking about that on one of your TikTok lives. And I was like, yeah, actually, because, when in working with clients and with my own stuff, you can't move through something until you've looked at it, right? Like otherwise it's just like sprinkling powdered sugar on a pile of poop, right? It's like spiritual bypassing, right? Like you've got to acknowledge it and see it and feel it and deal with it. And so just sort of like brushing it aside doesn't actually heal the root of the cause of everything.
Agreed.
So I respect that, the root of what's underneath what you're saying.
Yeah, it's been interesting with So I don't know if you found me on, if we connected through TikTok or Instagram. There are a lot of, you would think that TikTok is all about the younger guns, the younger generation. At least that's what I believed initially, but it's actually more of a different psychology. There are some people who are just into, short videos and, getting a 30 seconds to a minute, quick fix, educational or something fun going on that they're watching. And other people prefer, Instagram or Facebook for that matter too. So it's just, there are a lot of people following my account who are actually like 50 something years old too. They just like TikTok better. So for the audience members listening, it's not just about the young guns. There are a lot of adults on that forum as well.
Yeah, I've seen like whole groups of people that are like 50 and beyond on TikTok. Have you seen this?
Oh God, are they doing dance skits?
No. They're just like proud of their age.
Okay, that's cool. But I mean, some of these guys are, in the hospitals nowadays, there's some conflicting reports, if I could say this, Miss Katie, about some hospitals being empty. There's some controversy as far as, is it really as bad as, the media is portraying things to be? So some evidence is, why do these doctors and these nurses and these nurse techs or whatever, why do they have all this time to dance? And you know what? If you're going to do that, that's no problem. Do what you need to do, but at least be in sync. If you're going to post this shit on TikTok and you're competing against this younger generation, at least be in sync so that it's presentable and competitive with these quality dancers of the future generation, man.
How do you really feel about that?
How do I really feel about that? Hey, if you got some downtime, do it. But be choreographed, man. Like I created a post on me doing a duet with some dude. We're singing an R. Kelly song. I actually didn't know it was an R. Kelly song, but I spent 6 hours rehearsing the lyrics and getting the lips and the timing right on that. And then I see these guys posting some of this stuff, and it's like, put some energy and love into it, man. Don't just post it just for the sake of posting it. So anyways, that's my street MD rant there. I think this elixir is working. I'm just speaking truth, man.
Take some more.
I will.
Actually, you probably should for this next question. I really want to, I've heard some really good stories from you late night on your TikTok lives. And this is, I think, this is my favorite question for you. But I would like to ask you how pain has been a motivating force in your life at times, or frustration or challenge. Yeah.
So before I answer that, I think when you catch me on live, you'll notice that I'm mostly on around midnights, late or 9 p.m. your time or so on, right? So one of the things that I would like to share with your audience is, I don't think people recognize this, but we all have like optimal time zones where we're at like our peak of a certain power, right? So for me, late night, when everyone else is asleep, and I don't know what time it's for you, but that's when my creative energy and my juice is flowing, right? Afternoon around this time, it's not to say that I cannot be creative, but this is like the time that I'm playing ping pong and tennis and, being more physically active and kind of stuff. And morning is like my administrative power, where I got to return emails, answer phone calls, take care of like basic accounting, math for the companies, and engage with my partners and so on. So late night is like, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it's like a very spiritual zen. Like when you know that the rest of the world is kind of like asleep, like do you find that too, where you have more of that creative energy? And so many times I have clients who are like, man, I don't know why I can't do this. I can't do that. And well, it will help drastically if you recognize, when your time frame power zone is, and then utilize that activity during that time. So late night, sometimes I talk some stuff that comes out of my mouth. I'm like, holy cow, like, yeah, where'd that come from? But to answer your question, it's no secret, or maybe to your audience, maybe this is something new, but medical school was probably the only time in my life that I didn't want to exist. And you might be thinking, well, then why don't you just leave medical school? I did. I left medical school for 3 years, and I went into medical school with the intention of, being a pediatrician, making a lot of money, finding my dream wife and buying a nice home, like all the wrong reasons, right? Like helping people was not in that equation. But, you're young, and, you grew up from parents who have a dry cleaning background, and it was not a very prosperous childhood, so you kind of get motivated and you're like, okay, I want to be a doctor, I want to be somebody, and so on. So I went in for all the wrong reasons. And when I went in, and when you go in with the wrong reasons and not enough of a purpose or power and meaning behind why you must do something like that, I'm sorry, but when you go into gross anatomy and you start cutting open dead bodies and looking at the heart and like going through that stuff, like you start questioning, like, oh my God, am I here? Like, I spent all these years studying to get into med school, and I cannot believe that I hate every, moment of this. So I left medical school. My parents disowned me at that time. So for 3 years, I was trying to work as a musician, making techno beats, and was in a band. And I don't know if you knew that about me, but for 3 years, I was literally on the streets, sleeping on people's couches, trying to break into the music industry. And the first year, Katie, was like, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was pretty fun. You're kind of in the drug scene, you're hanging out with the rock stars, and you get invited to cool parties. So I learned a lot about drugs during my music days. I learned how to talk to people and connect with others during my music days. But then after 3 years of going hungry, like literally a starving artist, I had no other options. So I went back into medical school, but this time I went in with purpose, which was I want to do something in the mental health, field. And then somehow that evolved into addictions. But man, medical school is tough. I mean, even Kelly Brogan and I were talking about this, about how it's like literally like a mental boot camp. And I'm not going to compare what we're doing to like Navy SEALs. Those guys are crazy, right? But if you could say that it's somewhat of like a intense, mind, like it's a crazy mind journey. And it's not easy to get through that on an emotional, psychological basis. And during some of my weakest moments, I've had the dean saying, I really regret accepting you. And this is after I failed my board exam twice, right? I was the only guy in my class that failed the national board exam the first time, which was really embarrassing because everyone else passed. And there was rumors going around that one person in the class didn't, pass. And so I had to study in like secrecy and shit, that was very humiliating. Like you're studying, the third year courses and stuff, but you also have to study the board exam that you failed from before. And I had to study in secrecy because I was so embarrassed about that. And then I failed the board exam again. At that point, I really did not want to wake up anymore. And I was seeing a therapist at the time. It was so painful. And she basically said, look, in order for you to have the things that you never had before, you must be willing to do things that you've never done before, and this is, pain is really a part of the process of, it's part of the process of achieving any level of success. So she kind of talked me into staying because I really wanted to quit again. And, it was just all grits and just pushing through with purpose. Every single time I felt like I couldn't do something, I just thought of the grand vision of like being a part of a practice like this. I'm part of a group practice now, and having a cup of coffee with someone, sharing truth and figuring out a way to, make an impact. That was very meaningful to me. It wasn't about the house or the wife or the bling blings anymore. It was like, okay, I need to get some message across. And when you have purpose, there's a saying that purpose equals power, and it allowed me to power through some of the most difficult things. But having gone through medical school, Katie, I have to say this current world pandemic situation doesn't pinch a nerve in my soul, other than being annoyed with some of the stuff that's going on in the media. But I'm not afraid at all. Like, it's weird, but I have a degree right behind me. And people will be like, oh, wow, like you have an MD. Well, no, I really didn't learn much in medical school other than how to deal with extreme amount of pain for a sustained period of time. And that's the greatest thing that I've learned from going through med school. So now when I go through any sort of challenges, because I don't see problems anymore, I only see challenges, it's really not that bad. I feel very confident that I can tackle on anything. So for the audience out there, if you guys are going through any level of emotional distress or pain, take it as you're getting a free course from the University of Life called Pain, Pressure, and Adaptation. And if you could endure this well with dignity and grace and come out of this, with some courage, wow, the stuff that used to piss you off before, it's nothing. You guys can be so much more psychologically empowered, and things that used to bother you will not hurt you nearly as much as they used to. So I think this could be a potentially great opportunity for people to thicken the callus around their mind and their spirit.
And how are you seeing that occur in people around you?
That's a very good question, Miss Katie Hess, because some of my clients, so I'm doing all telepsych, therapies, right? Treatments. And it's interesting.
You're all virtual right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
And so some of my clients are like, oh man, there's some more BS on CNN. I'm awakened to the truth. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. And we're getting fist bumps over the computer and stuff. But then there's other people who are like, man, we are going to die. This is the end of the world. I'm like, dude, what are you watching? And he's like, CNN said this and that. Like, my goodness, do you understand? The more you focus on this, the more you're going to be feeling what they're feeding you. And, they ultimately want you to watch more of the news. So hence, it's absolutely important for them to say something about something that's happening that's going to be unsettling to you. So you watch more of their stuff. So I would say about a good 40% of my clients are really in like panic mode right now because they think that this is like the end. And there's other 60%, including myself, who are somewhat, I don't want to say laughing or making light of the situation, but we're seeing it in a different perspective that, some of these data aren't fully accurate and we're going to be just fine.
Nice. Can we circle back around to when you were saying that you had a panic attack on stage?
Yeah, sure.
Can you talk a little more about that? I'm just curious. Just curious. I can relate.
So, yeah. So check this out. So this is during my 4th year of medical school, right? And I had to do a sleep presentation. Now, I have done plenty of presentations in like high school, college, and all this stuff before, but this was the first presentation that I had to present in front of a room full of doctors. And at the time, I believed that doctors actually knew what the hell they were talking about. So I was very intimidated by these guys. So I had to do a sleep presentation and I slept about probably 3 hours, just like rehearsing. So I get up on stage and I start talking. I had the slideshow and I couldn't read the slide and I couldn't talk. And then next thing I know, I fainted. And I was, and this was a room full of doctors. So they all circled me and they're like, hey, you okay? So I'm like, oh my God, like first off, it was so embarrassing. And then like after a panic attack, it's like hard to speak, like your words are kind of like stuttering and stuff. So I basically said like, yeah, I'm okay. And then what made the panic worse was they said, okay, well, as a graduation requirement, you need to come back next week and do this shit again. So that was horrible. And then for that week, I was, nervous. Eventually, I got the presentation over with. But, for someone like me, what I've come to learn from that experience is that, when something bad happens or something happens that has the power to move you from your peace, it really has the power to teach you something really important about yourself. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, why did this happen? Was it because of the doctors and I was nervous about that? Maybe. But really came down to sleep. I slept 3 hours the night before. And so I noticed that even when I'm seeing clients here, when I don't have the best night's sleep because I'm up all night, coming up with my Beyond Recovery, formulas and working on the website and all this stuff, I'm not as on. And sometimes like I'll forget like my train of thought. So that's why when it comes to mental wellness, because I don't like to use the word mental illness, just like some stigma about it. I don't like that. I think we should promote wellness, mental wellness. So in my very strong opinion, the 4 pillars of mental wellness are sleeping right, number 1, because if you don't sleep right, I'm sorry, but everything else goes down the tube, And then eating right, or if you don't have enough time to eat all the foods that are optimal for your mind-body health, then it's great to supplement as well. So sleeping right, eating right, exercising your mind and body rights, and last but not least, connecting with the right people. Because in addictions, they say that the opposite of addiction is connection. And it's amazing what happens when you connect with the right people, then your desire to do all these things that are really hurting you, they minimize. And you want to do other things. You want to connect with other people that can enhance your life experience. And so that's why, I have very influential friends who are very heavily engaged in AA in this community. And that's the thing that people are struggling with nowadays too, right? With AA, now everything's online, and that kind of connection isn't the same as actually being there and feeling everyone else's vibrations and their energy. So
you specialize in addictions, right?
Yes, I'm board certified in addiction medicine, and actually refused to be board certified in psychiatry because of how much I'm, and this isn't because I love Kelly Brogan and Sayer. It's just that before I even met them, that's just how I thought about the system. It just never made sense to me. Like, why are you just giving chemicals out? Why are we giving chemicals out to manipulate the serotonin, dopamine, endorphin system when we could offer nutrients that could help make this stuff naturally, So I'm not a nutritionist, I'm a psychiatrist, right? I'm a holistic psychiatrist. And it's actually amazing that people come in to see me and they say, hey, I'm feeling very depressed and anxious and so on. Okay, well, I think you should be taking probiotics because about 80% of your serotonin production is from your gut, and it's estimated somewhere around 50% maybe from the gut as well. And you need these healthy bacteria to help produce these serotonin and dopamine molecules for you. And then they'll take it, right? And after about a week or two, they'll come back and say, hey, not only do I feel more at peace, but my GI symptoms are resolved. Really, Mr. Jones, I never knew that you had GI symptoms. Well, I didn't think to tell you because you're a psychiatrist. So you're telling me that your GI specialist never once recommended probiotics for you. Even like stuff like if someone's on a statin, like a cholesterol medication, right? Like, I don't know if you're aware, but it drastically lowers your PQQ and your CoQ10 levels. So when that happens, people feel more tired. So you're supposed to give these CoQ10 supplements if you are on a statin medication, cholesterol medication. The cardiologists don't do that. And I guess this is the thing that frustrates me about this health system. It's always about some sort of pill. It's not enough about nutrients and supplementation. And so that's why in my practice, although I am a mental health specialist, it is ultimately a mind-body connection. It's really hard to feel happy when your body is not fully healthy either, right? So I incorporate all that into this holistic way of treating people.
So are you doing more tapers than the average psychiatrist?
Yes, the bulk of my clients are people who want to come off of prescription medications. So it started off as like, I'm someone who can detox you off of alcohol and or, opiates or benzos or so on. But interestingly, the people who really struggle the most are the people trying to come off of just general psychiatric medications. So for your audience, the three psychiatric meds that I've discovered from my clinical experience that are the hardest to come off of are Zoloft, Paxil, and Effexor. And I'm not saying that doctors have bad intentions and saying, hey, let me prescribe you Zoloft to get you hooked on this stuff. I mean, there are some people who could benefit from maybe like a short-term basis of something like that, But I don't think that a lot of doctors understand how much of a dependency that it could cause. So from my clinical experience, sometimes it's harder to come off of the prescription drugs that the doctors are legally prescribing than the illicit ones off the streets. Yeah, sometimes it could be a nightmare getting people off of it, and we have to do it very slowly. And as you're coming off of certain prescription medications, per se, that are artificially enhancing serotonin levels, then it only makes sense to give you nutrients and supplements that could naturally enhance serotonin production to off-balance that.
That's a freaking bold statement. You just said it's hard. It can be harder to get off psychiatric medications than street drugs.
Absolutely, Katie Hess.
Tell me more. What are people experiencing?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're aware, but I'm a part of the Benzo Information Coalition. And this is a group of healthcare providers, people who are really in tune with what's going on with the world. And the new epidemic is benzodiazepines. So these are the class of medications like Xanax, clonazepam, Ativan, Valium. You've heard of all these kind of things. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm happy to take a clonazepam when I fly on an airplane. It's a great way to release. So I had another panic attack when I was on a flight to South Korea when I was in like middle school. So when I fly, look, rather than meditating, I would prefer to take this one pill to just relax, fall asleep, and wake up in a new country. So that's my choice, okay? But if you do it that way, it's fine. But when you start taking a benzodiazepine like every single day and a decent amount for an extended period of time, and let's say your life circumstances get better and you just try to stop that, you could have a seizure coming off of that. It could be severe withdrawal. And I have a client right now who's been on it for like 8 years and a ridiculous amount from some jackass doctor that prescribed her to her and to that magnitude. Now, again, I don't know the doctor. I hope he didn't have, bad intentions. Maybe the lady was panicking and she just said, all right, just take this stuff, and I got to see my next patient. I don't know what happened, but she's on a lot and now she's trying to come off of it. And It's not easy. It's not easy. It's a slow taper to the point where she's on like 2 milligrams, and we got to get down to like 2 milligrams, like 1.95, 1.94. It's like this slow, dragged out taper. And it's interesting because some of these chemicals don't even come in like smaller doses than like a 2 milligram. So then they have to crush it up and weigh it on a scale and mix it with water and drink a little bit less of the water. It's like, we got to come up with crazy, creative ways to help people taper in a way that they can manage.
You're saying the patient has, or the client has to do that, crush it up and weigh it.
Exactly. And the client and I have to do like math equations to say, okay, if you break off this piece and, a quarter piece of that and weigh that, then that's equivalent to this. And then now we need to mix with water, and I need you to drink only this much of this mixed chemical water, because they don't come up with lower doses.
There's no compounding pharmacies that can taper.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, because there's a medication called suboxone, right? Subutex Suboxone. And here's the hypocrisy of all this. So the lowest dose of suboxone is about 2 milligrams. Yet 2 milligrams of suboxone equals about 60 milligrams of oxycodone. Now, they never taught me that in medical school. They never taught me that. So if someone's using about 60 milligrams of oxycodone, the typical doctor around the country will prescribe about 8 milligrams of suboxone starting off. So that means that's what?
Times 60?
Yeah, so 4 times 60. Yeah, so that's about 240 milligrams of oxycodone that they're prescribing in 8 milligrams of suboxone. You don't need to overprescribe that. So if someone comes in and they say, hey man, I'm taking about 60 milligrams of oxycodone a day. So 1 milligram equals about 30 milligrams of oxycodone from my clinical experience. Okay. So then all I have to do is put them on about 2 milligrams of suboxone or Subutex, which is, a similar medication form. And this substitute medication helps with their compulsive, a drive to want to keep taking this oxycodone over and over again. It's like this long-acting opioid, and there is, some benefits to taking something like that to stabilize, start taking better care of themselves, and then I would slowly taper them off of Subutex or Suboxone over a slow period of time. Incorporate other, natural remedies to help get off of that too. It's a first step of regaining control. But if someone's on like 60 milligrams of oxycodone or a little bit more, most doctors will prescribe about 8 milligrams of Suboxone or even 12 milligrams. And then if you multiply that by 30, then you're getting yourself into a worse situation than you were before.
You're like tripling or quadrupling your dose.
Yes. So now these guys are walking around saying, yes, I'm sober. And I'm saying, yes and no. I mean, yeah, technically you're not shooting up heroin, you're not doing all these other pills, but now got yourself in a situation where now you're dependent on Suboxone. So just so you know, the guys that are producing Suboxone, I do believe that there's some good to this medication, especially if, you have a family member or a loved one who's shooting IV heroin, right? Like that, or IV fentanyl for that matter now. People could OD and die in a heartbeat. So this medication, I will say, can save lives, but ultimately, depending on who the prescriber is, the way you get a Suboxone license, I don't know if you know this, Katie, but you got to take like a 6-hour course. And then now you are an expert in Suboxone or opioid addiction treatment. So you could have a gynecologist whose practice is, falling because of whatever the situation is right now, and say, you know what, man, I want to make some bank off of these addicts. So let me take the 6-hour course, and boom, I have a license to prescribe Suboxone. Now I have a certificate that says that I'm an expert in opioid addiction. I mean, I trained in Camden, New Jersey for 4 years. That's like, one of the drug capitals of the globe. And so I had some first-hand experience in like some hardcore settings of how to treat these guys. And also being a musician myself, I've, messed around with a lot of stuff, right? So I have an understanding of things that the books don't teach you. So when the drug reps come in and they start to, want to take you out to dinner and get you to prescribe more of their medications, and I called them out. I said, no, I'm not going out to dinner with you guys, and you have an agenda. You want me to prescribe more of your medications. And they'll say, well, we just want to keep the place safe. We just want to keep everyone safe, and we don't want people to die. Okay, well, do you want your daughter to be on Suboxone? And then that stumps them every single time. So yeah, there's a lot of shady things going on in the pharmaceutical industry. Hence, my friends and I decided that we need to do something about this. And we're really into eating rights. But if you don't have the time or the energy or the resources to eat like the quality of foods that you need to eat to optimize your mind, body wellness. Because if you think about it, like serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, these neurotransmitters that make you feel good and give you a sense of emotional wellness, and also foods or nutrients that could help cleanse out your stuff too. If you're not eating enough of that, then you're not going to feel very good. And if you don't feel very good, that doesn't mean that you have a disorder. It just means that you got to start living smarter and making better lifestyle choices. So yeah, so that's why my friends and I, we're trying to do something about this right now.
I was actually shocked when I heard from Kelly that she was saying, I read her most recent book and I was like, okay, from all these bullet points, like what do you see the most of? And she said something like gluten was like a huge root of depression for people.
Not only gluten, but if you think about like just preservatives and chemicals and think about, so if you notice how like organic foods just go bad a lot faster than the non-organic ones. And you got to question it, like these pesticides are ultimately neurotoxins. They, kill a bug by destroying its nervous system. So I'm not saying this is fact. This is just my theory. But, if there's like this, ADD or this autistic craze going on in this world these days, before it used to be like 1 in like 10,000 would be diagnosed with an autistic spectrum condition, because I don't like to use the word disorder. And then now it's like 1 in 30. Some people say it's vaccines. I don't know, but I think that some of these pesticides have something to do with it. If these neurotoxins that are found in these pesticides are consumed by a mother who has a fetus, right? If some of that, for us, that might not be as toxic to burn our central nervous system, but for a developing fetus, maybe it could slightly dent it. And maybe that's why some of these guys that are just a little bit off, like socially awkward, maybe some part of their brain just isn't as tight as it could be. So that's just my theory. So please don't make it sound like I'm saying that the pesticides are the cause of autism throughout the globe these days. But it kind of makes sense to me and to some of my other friends who are thinking about this, because, we're not seeing the literature on that, but it does make sense to us.
Well, I think that gives people empowerment of, I can make changes in my life and my lifestyle. I can eat differently. I can move differently. I can work with natural remedies and supplements. Otherwise, we get stuck in this. I look at the stats and it's like 1 in 5 American adults on psych medications. And how many people are saying to themselves, there's something wrong with me. There's something fundamentally wrong with me, right? So I have to take this medication.
Exactly.
That's kind of heartbreaking when it could be something as simple as like gluten or pesticides or what you're eating or what
like
you're drinking.
Or like a magnesium deficiency. So some, I don't know if most people are aware, but if they, the sales of alcohol are up about 55 to 60% since this, pandemic happened, right? And when you drink alcohol and or are worrying or stressed too much, your magnesium levels deplete. It actually costs energy to worry, and magnesium is required for energy production. So magnesium levels deplete, and when that happens, people feel more anxious. People tend to worry and obsess more. People's sleep gets choppy. People feel more tired. They have more muscle aches. They're more constipated. That's why magnesium is required. If you're constipated, there's a milk of magnesia, right? So magnesium is responsible for 300 plus things in the body for it to function properly. If they're like saying, I just feel like garbage from all this stuff, sometimes even just a simple magnesium supplement could be super helpful in people feeling back to their, better version of themselves.
Okay, so if there are any listeners who are interested in tapering, what kind of advice would you give them? And are there any just off the top of your head, like top 5 things that you would recommend nutrition-wise that people invite into their diets a little bit more of, either when they're in the tapering process or when they're not on medication, they just feel a little funky and maybe they want to make sure all the boxes are checked?
Right. So I would say that even if your, listening audience may not have an active addiction or a dependency. So the difference between addiction or dependency is that when you're addicted to something, you totally lose control of yourself to sustain a certain habit. So you might rob from your friends, go to the streets, do what you need to do to get the drug. I have no control over myself to sustain a certain habit. Dependency is like you're taking something over and over again for a sustained period of time, and then all of a sudden you stop it, and then you go into withdrawal, or you need more and more of the drug to get the same desired effect. That's basically what it comes down to. So if someone is dependent on a drug or a chemical, whatever, or they might have a loved one or so on. The first thing that you guys have to consider is that, people say, oh, I heard that drug X is harder to get off than drug Y. That's not true. It always comes down to this. It's the three factors that determine how difficult it will be to come off of a drug. One is how much of a drug you're taking. Second factor is for how long have you been taking that drug? And the third factor is how strong is your psychology? So if someone's been using a 1 milligram of a drug for 2 days versus someone using 10 milligrams for 10 years, obviously the surface area, if you visualize that XY graph, it's going to be a lot more grander in the second scenario. And that's the magnitude of pain that you must endure to get off of that chemical. And that's what I explain to everyone who wants to come off. Now, once they say, okay, I want to do this, they always talk the good talk, but when they go into it and it starts hurting or it's uncomfortable, that's where I kind of get a better glimpse of their psychology. And listen, I'm not trying to be weird here or anything, but I will say that from my clinical experience, women are by far a lot more powerful than men. You got these big tattooed up dudes with motorcycles coming in saying, yeah, I want to detox. You drop them down by 1 milligram and they start crying, and then you have these women who are like skinny. They just like, they might be even older or younger, whatever. And, sure, everyone's to some extent are nervous about detoxing and they understand that it's not going to be comfortable, but women take pain a lot better than men. So yeah, much respect to females. And maybe that's the reason why God allowed you ladies to bear children, because God probably knew that men couldn't endure that level of pain or discomfort. So the psychology is super important in terms of one's ability to succeed in a detox. And so that's basically the first part of your question. I forgot the second one that you were asking.
I was just going to say that's really interesting because when I was seeing clients, the first 10 years of my career was seeing clients one-on-one, and that's all I did. I didn't have products. I didn't sell flower essences. And every client that I had who was on psych medications, like around month 3 or 4, came in and was like, you know what? I think I want to get off this. And so, obviously I'm not a psychiatrist, so I would recommend them to work with their doctor to taper off. And every single client that I had in that decade effectively got off of psych medications. And there were a couple clients that I had where there were speed bumps, and we had to do, with every client, I would do mind training techniques. Like, what do you do when you have like super intense anxiety, or when you're like angry or rage or fear, right? And I think it's so interesting that in our culture, we're not given the tools to just simply deal with our own emotions, like intense emotions, right? And we have this fear that they're going to like overtake us. And that's what you would call psychology, right?
Right. This is why we need more people like you, and people need to hear these kind of podcasts to be empowered and in tune to what's really going on. And, I'm sure you're spreading a lot of very powerful, spiritual messages that could help empower someone to overcome these kind of challenges. Because it's not easy to come off with a drug, especially when you've been on it for a really long time.
It seems like it requires so much patience because, my spiritual teacher would always say, if you're on some kind of substance, whether it's street drugs or pharmaceutical medications, it takes about 10 years to like really detox it out of your body, right? Like every last little cell and DNA energetically to like forget that this substance was ever in your body.
Right.
And then like another 10 years to fully energetically expunge from your mental or emotional capacity any remnant that this was even a situation.
Right.
That's a lot of time. It just requires a lot of patience, and for people to know that it's not just like an overnight thing, right? Like, I'll just like stop taking these pills and I'll be fine tomorrow. Like there's a whole process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one way of looking at it. But the other thing that I would encourage your audience members to consider is, it's like that saying from Stephen Hawking, right? That intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. So if, people say, hey, by me taking these chemicals for 10 years and now like my memory is just like off, it's not as sharp as it used to be 10 years ago, is that like permanent brain damage? And I'll say, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But maybe we can learn to adapt. There's a reason why I carry like a notepad with me, because sometimes my memory is not as sharp, and maybe it has something to do with some of the shit that I put into my body years ago. So for every day I write 3 things down. that I must do. It's not negotiable. If I don't do it, like if I don't show up for Katie Hess's podcast today, I'm not going to sleep. So I have to have three things that I must do that are somehow going to enhance my life journey in some way. And I make sure that those three things are going to be crossed out. So, but that's, some people have the ability to just remember the three things they need to do, or seven things. Me, my memory's not as sharp. I'm the guy that had to read things like 3 or 4 times to get it. You know, Kelly Brogan and Sayer, man, those guys, they could probably read it once in like 2 seconds and like spit out that knowledge. That's not Joe Yee, you know. So I carry a notebook with me and always write things down, cross it out, and I just adapt it that way. So, you know, some people are like, will I ever be normal again? And then I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what is normal? Because especially the guys out there that look like they're normal, they're usually the craziest guys out there, man. Some of the people who are the craziest people I've ever met are the people that are outside of the psychiatric units. So, you know, be careful with who you engage with, because they might have a good face and everything, but when you really dig into it, they have, and crazy as in like, sometimes I'll even say like, man, like Kobe Bryant is crazy. Like that's a compliment. Like that's like at another level kind of stuff. But there are also, when I say those kind of crazy, there's some people who have very ill intents and very toxic energies. And those are the people that we need to, you know, maybe there's other people that can make them happy and be happy with them. But, you know, one of the key things that I'm asking everyone is look at the people that you surround yourself with, and are they making your life journey any better? Are they enhancing you, or are they getting in the way of you getting your shit done? And if that's the case, it's better to let go of this kind of people, because they're really going to weigh you down. And people don't understand the level of toxic spiritual energy that comes into your life from some of these people, right? So.
Oh, and I think we got off track. Okay, so you got like the second part of the question we both forgot was like top 5 supplements that you would recommend people weave into their lives, or nutritions or foods or.
So, okay. So as I kind of mentioned this before, but if you eat really toxic foods all day long, you know, 12 donuts a day, 3 times a day for 10 years, let's just say, and you have all this crap in your system, it doesn't really serve much benefit to have, you know, a bowl of blueberries and a carrot at the end of the night. You know, try to visualize it as you have so much toxins and crap into your system that the nutrients don't have the real estate to go into and do what it's supposed to do, to offer value into your life. So it's actually better to detox and not eat any nutritious stuff and just get the stuff out. At least drink water so you don't die, right? But get the stuff out, and that's better than continue to eat the toxic foods and add good stuff on top of that. Okay. So I would say that if you guys are serious, if people are serious about, you know, nutritional supplements, it's good to take something like milk thistle and chaga mushroom. I'm a big fan of Nigella black seed oil. It just tastes really bad, but it's great for like just boosting your immune system, helping cool down your body, helping neutralize toxins. So, but rather than supplements, I'm a big fan of just eating clean. You know, if a very simple thing for our audience together today, because we're joining forces today, is a mnemonic called G-Bombs. G-Bombs. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but that's from Dr. Joel Fuhrman of Eat to Live. And these are the 6 super healthy longevity foods. So try to condition your mind into seeing this as an opportunity to eat more of this stuff. So G stands for greens, B stands for beans, O for onions, M for mushrooms, B for berries, and S for seeds and nuts. And these foods are the 6 healthiest longevity foods on the planet and also have tremendous anti-cancer properties. So if you just eat these kind of foods, and I'm not saying don't eat, you know, the other stuff that you enjoy. If you like a piece of steak, sure, at least eat it from a bone rather than, you know, some processed meat and stuff like that. If you eat more like that, the body will naturally help cleanse your body out and give you the nutrients you need to optimize your body and mind functioning. But in terms of supplementation, sorry, for it specifically, are you talking about like mental health clients or just generally?
I mean, both. Same, right?
I mean, if you're feeling great and you're eating right, you're doing the right things, then maybe someone like you don't need to supplement, you know? But I could certainly speak for myself and many other people I know. They just, you know, a very common complaint is that I don't have the time or the resources. You know, again, I'm a big fan of tryptophan and or 5-HTP. These are amino acids that help produce, serotonin in your body. But in order to get 100 milligrams of 5-HTP or tryptophan, you got to eat like 2 bags of pumpkin seeds. And I don't think people have the time and energy to do that. I don't know.
Hot bars of chocolate.
Sure, you could do that. So that's why I think supplementation can be very helpful for some people who don't have that time to eat all the things, because it could get overwhelming when you look at all the health foods that are required. You need this much of this and that and the other. So,
and is there anything that folks who are on psych medications who want to taper that they should be saying to their psychiatrist other than just like, I really want to taper? And do most psychiatrists, are they familiar with the process?
Well, thanks for asking that, because you meet some really interesting people on social media and they DM you and they say, hey, you should write a book about, how to detox and all this stuff. I would love to, but I just, I think you and I are both limited with our time, right? We're just so busy with so many other things that are going on with our lives. But I would love to write a book called The Art of Detox or something like that. And the first half of the book will be teaching people what they need to know about detoxing properly and smart, and asking about the proper comfort medication so that when you're coming off of medication, you feel more emotionally stable and not just like, left to your own devices here. And then also the second half of the book, I was thinking maybe teaching doctors about, listen, I understand this is what you were brainwashed in medical school, but here's the way you should go about detoxing. And I have 10 years of credibility behind my name to say that I know what the hell I'm talking about. So in terms of tapering, this is where it gets kind of tricky, because if you are on a medication like Zoloft, for example, right? Let's just use Zoloft and a simple number like 100 milligrams. So you go from 100 milligrams to taper down like 90, taper down 10% to 90, right? And let's say that the patient was able to handle that. Although Zoloft does not come in 90 milligrams. So you got to get creative in creating that 90 milligram dose. But from 100 to 90 is a 10% drop, right? So then someone else might be on 20 milligrams of Zoloft. And the doctor might say, okay, well, that last person handled that 10 milligram drop. So let's go from 10 milligrams to 20 to 10 milligrams. Now, Katie, that's a 50% drop. That's a whole different scenario there. You understand? So that's the mistake that a lot of doctors and patients make when they're tapering, is like they just keep going 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams down. And then at a certain point, like even when you come down initially, it takes some time for that body to adjust to that lower dose. It's not like you're at 100 milligrams, you go down to, 90 milligrams and you're at 90 milligrams the next day. No, you're probably going to be at 100 milligrams for probably about another week or so, because it's still in your system. So people after a few days are like, oh, I could handle this. Let me drop down another 20. Let me drop down another 30. And then boom, it's like an avalanche of a tidal wave that hits you about a week or two later. So you got to be very careful and smart, depending on the drug too.
This is like withdrawal symptoms. It's not that, oh, actually there is something wrong with me and I am depressive and I need to get back on this medication. It's simply that you're going through a withdrawal period, right?
That, and sometimes when I do taper someone down, so I like to, depending on the chemical, right? Some you could go more aggressive, like Prozac, for example, is what I love about Prozac. If I had to prescribe my family member something, I'd just go with Prozac if I had to. If nothing else is working, and say my son is very depressed or so, and nothing else is working, maybe for a short-term basis, I would prescribe something like Prozac. It's long-acting, it's activating, it gives a little bit of a pep in their step, and it's very easy to come off of. So my clients understand that if I'm going to prescribe you something, it has to be something that I'm willing to prescribe to my own family member. Because if I want to prescribe you some toxic chemical that I would never allow my kids to take, how could I look myself in the mirror and brush my teeth and be happy about myself, right? So I have to be very truthful with all my clients that I would do this for my own family member as well. So I like a medication like Prozac because it's old school. Some of these newer generation medications, they try to pitch it as like, oh, this is the greatest thing since blah, blah, blah. It could do X, Y, and Z. You know what, man? I still think Prozac in terms of antidepressant, it just works just as well. Even like lithium, like an old school element, really works very well for some people who are really deep in dark depression and they don't even have the capacity to want to eat better or want to exercise or connect with people and meditate. Like they're just so depressed. Sometimes a little bit of lithium on a short-term basis can be helpful in terms of mood stabilizing. But it depends on the drug, Katie. Some medications are like Prozac, I would say, is very easy to get off of. So if someone's on like 10 milligrams of Prozac for like a few years, okay, well then just stop it. And then take some 5-HTP and a B complex and some magnesium with that so that you're boosting up your serotonin levels naturally to offset the downgrade of the Prozac. And sometimes people do well. Other times we come down on a medication, or depending on the medication, some are harder than others to come off of. After about a week, they say, you know what, like, I don't feel very good. And I'll say, okay, well, that's because you're coming off the drug. Another week or two goes by and they say, look, now I'm starting to obsess more. Now I'm like starting to get super anxious and I'm having panic attacks. Well, Mr. Jones, then do you think that it might be for the best for you to stay on this medication? Because it seemed like it was doing something good for you. And then I allow the patients to make that decision. I'll tell them what I think, but ultimately they're the boss, right? They hired me. I'm their consultant. So they have to make the final call.
And can you talk just a little bit more about connection and the importance of connection? You were saying that's the opposite of addiction. For folks who have addiction in their families or family lineage, anything you can offer about connection?
I noticed, the common denominator that I observed in people who just seem to be doing really well in life is they have some really beautiful, amazing, powerful connections, and they all help each other get to the next level. And then I see people who are just, really struggling or sucking in life. And then when it comes down to it, it's like, why are you still hanging out with this jackass? Like, what value does he provide to you in your life other than just putting you down, cheating on you, making you feel like a piece of shit? Why are you hanging out with him? Because I love him. Okay. So then if you keep hanging out with toxic people, unfortunately, you're going to have those kind of vibrations rubbing off on you. You're going to be thinking more like them. And, you might get different. If you think a certain way, you act differently and you get different results in life. So, what I really love about social media is I think one of the coolest things that's happened in the recent past is me connecting with you. I've had the opportunity to connect with Kelly and some just random people who aren't even influencers that just are just saying, hey, doc, did you read this article? And it's like, wow, I didn't know about this. This is great information. Thank you. And just connecting with the audience and just getting some good feedback and stuff. I find that to be so fulfilling that I feel happier now, ironically, than before the Sharona thing happened, because this experience ultimately allowed me to connect with such beautiful, awesome people all around that I never knew existed. And because of social media, we had this opportunity to connect. And ironically enough, I feel very fulfilled with these relationships.
Okay, we're just getting near the end because I don't want to drag it out too long, but can you just speak a little bit to the power of humor when you have a message that is maybe thought-provoking and how you reach to humor as a form of your expression?
Yeah. So what I've noticed is that I tried getting messages across to people, right? Like these are the top 4 health, mental health tips to overcome anxiety or something like that. And people would just scroll right past that, and you put all this time and energy and effort into it and no one really cared, right? But then, I don't know, something came over me and I just started making like a skit of like me and my daughter doing something and and then plugging a message in there or so.
She's such a powerhouse, by the way. Your daughter is amazing.
She's an old soul. Yeah, absolutely. And it got some good responses, and people saying, hey, I love the message. That was a very clever way of, getting that message across and so on. And I've come to realize that, to connect with other people, it's not just about saying, hey, let me have a teachable moment with you. Let me just teach you something. But if I could help elicit some sort of a feeling within you, Katie, like where you feel inspired, you're laughing, you think this gets funny, or, there's or like, I might say something, it's like, that's a good point. Let me do something about it too. And if I empower you, that's how I seem to connect with people the best. That's where, like, if you see some of these social media influencers and stuff, they're very smart in eliciting some sort of a powerful emotion within you. And from then on, if you add a little bit of wisdom on top of that, that's a great way to get people to want to follow you, want to connect with you. And once that connection happens, there's a lot of beautiful things that comes with it. The good karma comes with it too. But along with that, you get some other people who aren't in tune with your message. But interestingly enough, the guys who are the haters, they still like to follow my account and see what I have to say next. So interesting, right?
So they can stay on your case.
It's like Howard Stern back in the day. He'll go off on his audience and then they just like love him and they just keep going back. So yeah. But it's been a great experience overall.
And do you have any sort of last words of wisdom, things that you often find yourself telling people, or something that just kind of springs from your heart?
To our current audience, I would say that from my life experience, and this isn't something that I've learned in school, I'll say this is probably the most important thing that I could say to your audience, is that there are people who struggle in life. And there are people who seem to be doing very, very well in life. And I've had the opportunity through my practice of working with people in both cases. And you're wondering, okay, well, people are soaring in life. Why the hell do they need to see you? Well, sometimes they just want to consult with me on a business idea, and I'll give them my psychological thoughts on it. I noticed a pattern, Katie. And this is something that I believe everyone should know. People who seem to struggle in life, the common denominator that I see is that they focus a lot on fear-based thoughts, things that make them feel uncomfortable. I got bills to pay. I got to deal with this motherfucker. I got this thing I need to do. I don't want to do this. I hate my job, whatever, okay? And about 70% of the time before people go to sleep, their thoughts are something about some fear-based uncomfortable thoughts. And I notice this pattern. Now, the people who are soaring in life, that seem to have their shit together, at least on the surface, right? These guys, the common denominator that I've noticed is that they obsessively focus on what they want and they believe in it. So that's the main difference. It's not a matter of these guys are thinking negative and these guys are thinking positive. It's these guys are thinking fear-based and these guys are believing and focusing on what they want, what inspires them. So, hey, your audience members, you and me both, we have the power of choice. We can practice worrying and practice anxiety, or we could practice believing. And you know what? It might be very difficult to practice believing in yourself or practice having a vision of something awesome and beautiful, inspiring when you feel really shitty. But, you know, a great reminder, a great trigger to start practicing these kind of things is before you go to bed. You know, again, 70% of the thoughts that people think about before they go to sleep is on something fear-based. So if we could just take 5 minutes, Katie, 5 minutes to just think about something beautiful, you know, have a vision of something amazing, a life that's greater than what it is now for you and your family. And you practice believing in that. Believe to the point where, I mean, people could do that, right? People could say, okay, I visualize myself opening up a cupcake shop and I believe I can do it. Yeah, but do you really believe that? Do you really believe that you could do that? So you got to practice believing to the point where you could feel it. And that's the part of the law of attraction that people don't really talk about much. It's like, yeah, visualize it, see it and believe it, baby. Yeah, but what about the feeling part? You got to believe it to the point where you're feeling it, where you feel like it's actually real. And I encourage everyone to do that at least 5 minutes a day before bedtime. Probably the single most important thing that I could advise to anyone to exercise the mind properly.
Love that. And where can people find more of you, Joey?
It's JoyMD on Instagram, JoyIMD on Instagram. And TikTok is at StreetMD. Come on, man. I got to have a sense of humor, right? It's kind of cool. So,
I love it. I love it.
That'd be a great way to find me. So.
And then your website?
Oh, so I don't have a personal website, but myself and 3 other doctors created a supplement line called Beyond Recovery. And this is kind of like in line of all the things I was talking about. We felt like because our healthcare system is a little bit unsettling, and maybe some people like it the way it is, but there are other people who are awakened and they feel like, okay, there's got to be a different way for mind-body healing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sure you started your company as well with LOTUSWEI. So it's like we got together and we created a supplement line to help out cleanse the body and help support neurotransmitter synthesis. Also, we have ingredients that could help empower your immune system as well. So we're very excited about this. So the only website that I could say is beyondrecovery.com. Check it out.
And then is there anything else you want to say about the things that you've created? I mean, like this blood, sweat, and tears powder that I've been taking every morning.
Well, just a background story behind how this was made. So me and 3 other doctors felt like there has to be a different way of going around helping people. Now, you hear that all the time, and some people might be happy with the way the system is. But there are other people who are awakened who could look at something like this, that if you're depressed, there's a pill for it. If you have attention issues, there's a pill for it. So there are plenty of people who are more holistic, and usually those guys are more in the West Coast. East Coast, generally speaking, are not as, in my opinion, awakened as the West Coast. And I live in the East Coast, just to be clear, and I love New York City. It's my favorite place in the world, next to Romania. But West Coast guys seem to be a lot more in tune with wellness and nutrition and, mind, body, energy healing and stuff, right? So me and 3 other doctors got together and we said, hey, we need to start doing something about this because we don't like this over medication, over prescription. There's got to be a different way. So we came out with the company Beyond Recovery, and our first formula is a modern detox formula. Basically, we have ingredients, as we talked about before, that has ingredients to help cleanse out your system so that the nutrients can come in and help support your neurotransmitter synthesis, particularly serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. Now, who is this for? It's for people who can use some help with mood support. It's people who may be feeling well, but they want to cleanse out toxins. There are a lot of people who are feeling great, but they do juicing, detoxing for weeks on ends and so on. So this is something that could be supplementing your detox drinks. This is something that could be helping support your immune system and helping with your mood. So I would say that this would be great for you to take about a quarterly and then take about a month off, see how you feel. If you feel fine without it, no need. But supplements, you don't want to be taking like every single day for the rest of your life. Even with supplements, you can develop some sort of a tolerance to it. So I would say about a quarterly, try it out, and then take about a month off, and then go back on like a quarterly if you feel like you felt better on it before. So I used to watch a lot of TV shows with people and celebrities coming out and saying, buy my shit, watch my movie. And I would think that was like the cheesiest thing. So quite frankly, it's like a little bit weird to, talk about a company and, because my purpose of coming on was to connect with you and say hello to your audience and, just vibe, right? So I appreciate you asking that question. And it's always weird to kind of want to plug a product, but if, a wise woman once told me that if you really believe in something that you created and you believe that it can make an impact in this world, then you should talk about it. So I'm going to listen to that lady and say, hey, we worked our asses off creating this thing. And truthfully, when I look at this bottle, I wish I could tell you that I feel joy and a sense of achievement in it. But all I feel really is relief that this was finally made, because you don't understand the magnitude of hurdles and, BS that we had to overcome, people ripping us off and, some people quitting on us. And, we just kept fighting and fighting for what we believed in. And to get this made, that is the victory in and of itself. If the company goes to shit, so be it. But the fact that I was able to hold this thing in my bottle and say, yes, I had a vision for it. I believed in it. I believe that this is something that could be awesome for other people. And to just get it made was the true victory for me on a personal level. Now, my partners, if the company goes shit, maybe they won't be happy. But for me, as a founder, I guess there's a tremendous sense of relief and some level of satisfaction knowing that we finally did it.
Now you can visualize the tens of thousands of people that will have it in their hands and then consume it in their bodies, and they'll become more shiny and radiant and beautiful because of all that hard work.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to be doing some ad campaigns soon. So I guess we'll be talking more about that when the time comes. But today was just great to see you. And, you and I have been messaging on and off, getting to know each other and stuff. So to see you and have a conversation with you was truly an honor for me.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, man. It's awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.